decision because of a broken heart. Welcome to the magnificent North Stories Be Here. Fortuna Castle, Wolf Hall, to the Meridian Empire, Chaos, Underground Kingdom, the Cemetery, the Mermaid and the Pearls, the Spires, the Spires, Warnings and Signs. Warnings and Signs. The bell hanging outside the Curiosity shop knew the human was trouble from the way he moved through the door. Bells have excellent hearing, but this little chime didn't need any particular skill to catch the crude jangle of the gaudy pocket watch chain at this young man's hip, or the rough scrape of his boots as he attempted a swagger, but only succeeded in scuffing the floor of Maximilian's oddities, curiosities, and whimsies. This young man was going to ruin the girl that worked inside the shop. The bell had tried to warn her a full 2 seconds before the boy opened the door. The bell rang its clapper. Unlike most humans, this shop girl had grown up around the oddities, and the bell had long suspected she was a curiosity as well, though it couldn't figure out exactly what sort. The girl knew that many objects were more than they appeared, and that bells possessed a sixth sense that humans lacked. Unfortunately, this girl, who believed in hope and fairy tales and love at first sight, often misinterpreted the bell's chimes. The day the bell was fairly certain that she had heard its cautionary ring, but from the way her voice affected an excited edge as she spoke to the young man, it seemed as if the girl had taken the bell's early toll as a serendipitous sign instead of as a warning. Part 2. The Tale of Evangeline Fox. Tale of Evangeline Fox. The Whisper Gazette, Where Will the Broken-Hearted Brino? By Cutlass Knight Linger. The door to the Prince of Hearts church has disappeared, painted the deep blood red of broken hearts. The iconic entry simply vanished from one of the Temple District's most visited churches sometime during the night, leaving behind an impenetrable marble wall. It's now impossible for anyone to enter the church. Evangeline shoved the 2-week-old newsprint into the pocket of her flowered skirt. The door at the end of this decrepit alley was barely taller than she was, and hidden behind a rusted metal grate instead of covered in beautiful blood-red paint. But she would have bet her father's curiosity shop that this was the missing door. Nothing in the Temple District was this unattractive. Every entry here was carved panels, decorative architraves, glass awnings, and gilded keyholes. Her father had been a man of faith, but he used to say that the churches here were like vampires. They weren't meant for worship. They were designed to entice and entrap. But this door was different. This door was just a rough block of wood with a missing handle and chipped white paint. This door did not want to be found, yet it couldn't hide what it truly was from Evangeline. The jug shape of it was unmistakable. One side was a sloping curve, serrated slash, forming one half of a broken heart, a symbol of the fated Prince of Hearts. Finally, I hope we're a pair of wings. Evangelines were stretching out behind her, eager to take flight again. After 2 weeks of searching the city of Belinda, she'd found it. When the gossip sheet in her pocket had first announced that the door from the Prince of Hearts church had gone missing, few imagined it was magic. It was the scandal sheet's first article, and people said it was part of a hoax to sell subscriptions. Doors didn't simply disappear. But Evangeline believed that they could. The story hadn't felt like a gimmick to her. It had felt like a sign telling her where to search if she was going to save her heart and the boy that it belonged to. She might not have seen much evidence of magic outside of the oddities in her father's curiosity shop, but she had faith it existed. Her father, Maximilian, had always spoken of magic as if it were real, and her mother had been from the magnificent north, where there was no difference between fairy tales and history. All stories are made of both truths and lies, she used to say. What matters is the way that we believe in them. And Evangeline had a gift when it came to believing in things that others considered myths, like the immortal fates. She opened the metal grate. The door itself didn't have a handle, forcing her to wedge her fingers into the tiny space between its jagged edge and the dirty stone wall. The door pinched her fingers, drawing a drop of blood, and she swore she heard its splintered voice say, "Do you know what you're about to step into? Nothing but heartbreak will come from this." But Evangeline's heart was already broken, and she understood the risk she was taking. She knew the rules for visiting fated churches. Do not make bargains with more than one faith, and above all, never fall in love with a fate. There were 16 immortal fates, and they were jealous and possessive beings before they'd vanished centuries ago. It was said they ruled over part of the world with magic that was as malevolent as it was marvelous. They never broke a bargain, although they often hurt the people they helped. Yet most people, even if they believed that the fates were merely myths, became desperate enough to break them at some point. Evangeline had always been curious about their churches, but she'd known enough about the mercurial nature of fates and fated bargains to avoid seeking their places of worship. Until 2 weeks ago, when she'd become one of those desperate people the stories always cautioned about. "Please," she whispered to the heart-shaped door, filling her voice with the wild and battered hope that had led her here. "I know you're a clever little thing, but you allowed me to find you. Let me in." She gave the wood a final tug. This time, the door opened. Evangeline's heart raced as she took her first step. During her search for the missing door, she'd read that the Prince of Hearts church held a different aroma for everyone who visited. It was supposed to smell like a person's greatest heartbreak. But as Evangeline entered the cool cathedral, the air did not remind her of Luke. There were no hints of sweet, or vetiver. The mouth of the church was slightly sweet and metallic. Apples and blood. Goose flesh covered her arms. This was not reminiscent of the boy she loved. The account she'd read must have been wrong, but she didn't turn around. She knew fates weren't saints or saviors, although she hoped that the Prince of Hearts was more feeling than the others. Her steps took her deeper inside the cathedral. Everything was shockingly white. White carpets, white candles, white prayer booths of white oak, white aspen, and flaky white birch. Eventually past row after row of mismatched white benches. They might have been handsome ones, but now many had missing legs, while others had mutilated cushions or benches that had been broken in half. Broken, broken, broken. No wonder the door hadn't wanted to let her enter. Perhaps this church wasn't sinister. It was sad. A rough rip shattered the church's silence. Evangeline spun around and choked back a gasp. Several rows behind her, in a shadowed corner, a young man appeared to be in mourning or performing some act of penance. Wild locks of golden hair hung across his face, as his head bowed and his fingers tore at the sleeves of his burgundy topcoat. Her heart felt a pang as she watched him. She was tempted to ask if he needed help, but he'd probably chosen the corner to go unnoticed, and she didn't have much time